Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Beans Recording, and welcome to part 2 of my video series on warping audio in Ableton. In the first video, we went over all the warp modes that are available down here, what they do, how they do, when they do, and yeah, if you haven't watched that and you're curious, you should go check that out. It's probably a good primer for this. But this is really going to be focusing on warping weird clips that don't follow the normal path towards looping. Maybe they're off beat, maybe they're too long, something like that. We're going to be talking about using groove and quantize on audio. We're going to be talking about warping long clips that maybe just don't fit very well into the context of a loop. And finally, I want to show you how to properly slice things so you can get little individual audio slices out using a particular type of warping. So let's get started with the first one, getting a loop that does not sit on the beat to properly loop and sit on the beat. Here's a drum loop I have. I'm going to play it for you real quick with a metronome on, and listen to the metronome and the loop together and hear how they are off. So a lot of stuff going on here. First of all, this beat does not start on the one being the downbeat. So we need to find the one and tell Ableton that this clip starts at a different place than it thinks it does. Now, your impetus might be to just come up here and edit it, find the one and edit the clip and move it over. But it's actually a lot better to do it a different way. We need to go down into the clip here and take a look at the structure of the WAV file and find our one. This is our one right here. You can see in our clip here, we have bar and beat numbers above the clip, right up here where the loop is, right that. We need to tell Ableton that this is the one as opposed to over here. And there's a really easy way to do that. If we right click on this little transient marker above our one, like that, we can say set 1-1 here. Now, when we did that, you'll notice a few things happen. I'll undo it. Take a look at the clip up here and also down here. Set 1-1 here. So it scooted it over to the beginning. That's because this little flag here represents the beginning of our clip. This above it represents the beginning of our loop. So I'm going to scoot this on over here too. So now our clip starts on the one. And now we can use the bar and beat markers to figure out things where our backbeat and stuff like that should go. So this is really, really useful to me whenever I start warping a clip. If we play this again, we'll hear that it's still not on. So we have a couple choices right now. I can just scoot this on over to the place where it should be, the snare, and hope that that warps the rest of the clip. But because we have a warp marker at the end of our loop here, it's going to have a different effect than if I got rid of that. Remember that warp markers represent sort of a gate, and when you have warp markers in and you try to move a place around within them, it's going to have a different effect than if there's no warp marker at the end of the clip at all. When we get into longer clips, you'll see how this is even more important. But right now, I'm going to double click on that warp marker at the end and get rid of it. Come in here, find my snare, which goes on the backbeat, this snare right here. So I need to put that on the 2, and I need my other snare to go on the 4. Now, keep an eye on the clip up here, and watch what happens when I just drag this over to the 2. See how it just moved the entire structure of the clip over? That's what happens when you don't have a warp marker at the end. It's going to just try to reinterpret everything to the right of that movement. So now that I've moved my snare to the backbeat, let's listen and see if we need to do any more work. Yeah, it sounds like we're still off. We have a couple options for what to do from here, but I think for this one, the best thing to do would be to create some warp markers on the downbeats and move things to where they need to be. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this one, move it over to the 2. I know that this one belongs on the 3. I know that this one belongs on the 4. This one on the 5, probably this one on the 6. We'll listen to it after we're done. And then maybe this one on the 7 or on the 6-4. I don't even know what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and listen to it now. Okay, that sounds good. So in this particular case, we were able to set little warp marker sort of guideposts for this thing, and it warped just fine. This is actually a longer clip than I want, so I'm going to take the loop section here and scoot it on over to 5, and now I have a 4-bar loop that should just work fine for what we're doing here. that worked out pretty well. We'll get into some other ways to deal with that in a smidge. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is quantizing audio. If we go down here to our MIDI clip and we look at a 16th note grid, we'll see that everything sits perfectly on the 16th note grid, at least at the beginning. The end doesn't really count. And that's because I quantized this after I performed it. And what quantizing is you tell it a value, and if I go up to quantize settings here, you can choose a time value. In this case, I was using 16th, and you tell it how much you want it to do, and then it will scoot everything on over to the beginning of that value. And this is really useful to clean up like messy performances and other stuff like that. But it can also be used on audio, which is really, really cool if you have a piece of audio that's maybe a little unruly. In this case, if we zoom in at a 16th note grid here and look at our clip, we'll see that, yeah, things are a little off. That's because this was played by a human, and humans aren't, you know, machines, and that's fine. I like the way it sounds. There's a little bit of push-pull to the beat, a little bit of groove, you know, it's fine. But let's say I wanted to have all of this just sit right on I want to quantize this audio right on the 16th note. Well, we can do that. So you can use the shortcut, or you can right-click and go to Quantize. We can check our quantize settings first by hitting Control-Shift-U or Command-Shift-U on a Mac. And now we can choose the value. So if I hit OK, we'll see that all of the warp markers now exist on 16th notes. Anywhere there was a transient, it put one. You know, I'll zoom out here and you can see that again. See that? All those warp markers, and you can see that it just shoves things over just a little tiny bit. And now we are just like tack on the beat. But you also get like a ton of warp markers, and maybe that's not what you want. So just keep that in mind, that that is something that you can do. You can quantize audio. All right, the next thing I want to show you is a sort of non-destructive way to quantize audio, and also to make audio do fun things. And this is called groove. Groove is also how we apply swing in our pieces. So let's go ahead and mess around with that a little bit. Groove is sort of a template to move these transient markers around without warp markers. And if we look over here on the left-hand side of our clip, we'll see groove right next to time signature. We currently have no groove. So let's click this little recycle icon here, and welcome to the groove pool. It's kind of a mess, honestly. Like in Ableton 10, these were in folders. I do not know why they are not in folders anymore, and if anyone knows a way to fix this god-awful mess, please let me know. But unfortunately, that means that you just sort of have to like dig through some of these things. But I'm going to tell you what some of them mean and what you might be wanting to look for. If we go down to where it just says swing, here we go. Okay. So swing 16-1. What does this mean? Well, it means that it's going to swing the 16th notes by that much, not much at all. And down here we have some other versions of that. The higher the number here, the later the second and fourth event of this quantization will happen. Oh yeah, and it will let you hear it. So let's listen to this real quick. So that's almost a perfect non-swung 16th note. It's very much on the grid, like we talked about, the grid that we were working on earlier. As we go up, you're going to hear more of a galloping. Sort of like a, oops, sort of like almost like a house vibe, right? So let's apply some of these. I'll put this one on. You can just drag it down there. I'm also going to put into our, what we call our groove pool, I'm going to put a very, very high one. Let's listen to our drum beat real quick. Okay, I'm going to switch over to that super high swing. Hear the difference? One is very straight-laced, and the other one has some swing to it. Let's listen to it on this very clearly just 16th note tambourine. That is unbearably quiet. Here comes the swing. Here, what we can do actually is click on all of these. I'm going to choose the groove to none. Let's listen to this all together, and I'll apply swing on and off. So So there's a really extreme example of what swing can do to a thing. Now, the point here actually is not that we can swing this, though it is very cool that we can. If you ever need to take a straight beat and make it into like a house beat, you can use swing to do that using the groove pool. The point that I wanted to make here was that in the groove pool, we actually have a 16th note quantize. So if we drop this onto our drum loop here, we get the same effect that we had before with the quantize audio. It just happens transparently in the background. So if you ever want to sort of quantize a piece of audio or hear what it sounds like to quantize a piece of audio to a particular value, you can do that. And you can get really wild with it. Like here's an 8th note triplet quantize. Let's listen to this. That's really cool. Let's listen to what this sounds like. That is badass. That's so fucking cool. So really, really powerful. And if you find one that you like, so for instance, if you liked that, that 16th note quantize here, there's this little button, this arrow button. This is the commit button. This will commit this to the warp markers as we had before. So if I click this, we'll see exactly what we saw before when we quantized the audio. Same thing with like something crazy like this 8th note triplet. It'll put it all onto the 8th note triplet grid. A lot of things in this groove pool to mess around with. A lot of like swings that are copied after like older or classic machines like the MPC-8, MPC-16. We have the SP-1200 in here. It's because all these machines, people think that they have like a very sort of classic special swing the way that they work. So, you know, explore the groove pool. It's really, really powerful. You can do a lot to your audio, quote unquote, non-destructively. And as we've seen, every chunk of a clip can have a different groove on it. So just with this and warping, we can do so much fun stuff to transform audio in our pieces. Just completely change the way they work, which is super, super fun. Okay, let's talk about long pieces of audio that maybe, you know, are a little bit more difficult to warp. Like this is a full song. So if I wanted to use this in a remix or something like that, I could cut out chunks of it. I could do like, you know, little loops here and there, but I want to get the whole thing warped first. So that's what we're going to do. I'll change this to complex just so we don't get any artifacts for right now. And let's zoom in and take a look at what we got. I'm going to have our metronome on for this. Okay, so we can see that we have a drum intro right here. So the first thing we need to do is set our downbeat like we did with the other drum sample. So let's go ahead and do that by right-clicking on this and say set 1-1 here. That's going to at least start to get our clip to agree on bars and beats. Let's make sure we're not too narrow in our grid. There we go. Let's listen to this now.
Hey, bro.
Okay, so we can hear that we're already off. I'm going to do a little train right now, meaning I'm going to do a little training to this and tell it to move over a little bit and see if that helps by grabbing one of our transient markers and putting it where it belongs. So this belongs here.
Hey, bro. What's happening, bro? Got that good chiba. Right on. You down? I'm ready.
Okay, so we're still off. So we have a couple options here. We can go through and put those warp marker gates throughout and get this to, you know, do what we want to. But one of the first things I'd like to try is I like to right click here and choose one of these warp from things. These are going to try to warp the track from this point on beat. So let's try warp from here. So we can see immediately that it moved our thing over a little off the 1. I don't think this is going to work. Let's listen to it real quick. No, very much not. Let's try warp from here, start at 112. That definitely didn't work either. Let's try warp from here straight. No. Okay, so we need to set some gates for this. We're going to like train it just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start doing this. Let's go in and find some downbeats and scoot things on over just like I did with the previous clip.
Hey, bro. What's happening, bro? Got that good chiba. Right on. You down? I'm ready.
Once I get to like 9, I'm going to try to warp from here again and see if it figures it out.
Ready.
All right, let's try warp from here again. So right click, warp from here.
Dynamite.
No, still having an issue with that. Okay, that's fine. So this is one that you'd have to go through and put little gate markers throughout. Not the best, right? Like it's kind of not the best thing in the world. Let's try a different one. Let's see if we can get that warp from here to work real quick, okay? So I'm just going to start scooting some stuff over. We can see already that things aren't quite on the grid. You can't just quantize this, by the way. I know partly you're thinking like, why can't I just quantize this audio? Well, because some of these are going to be so off that they'll end up in really weird spots. So let's try warp from here. Now, you might notice that when we did that, the BPM down here changed, and we could hear that we are now too slow, and that's fine. It doesn't really know what the BPM of this clip is right now because it's not warped properly. So let's try that again. It seemed like we actually might have gotten somewhere with that. Now we're at 89, so let me turn this up. Yeah. Pretty damn good. So cool. Now I'm going to spot check all of the like major points here. Yeah. That looks great. So in this case, warp from here worked. So there's a lot of paths you can take with this, right? Like you can do the little gate mode where we just put in like signposts for the warp. Sometimes we'll get warp from here will work. It'll work differently on every clip, but just know that you have all of these cool techniques that you can use, all these different ways that you can get this stuff to work. All right, last but not least, let's talk about slicing, warp markers, and you. Okay, so we're just going to take this little chunk right here. So one of the things that people always wonder about is how do I slice in Ableton in such a way that I can get the slices out of it as individual things? And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we've made this little loop right here. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize our view so we're only looking at one iteration of the loop. All right, so check this out. So if I right click on this and I say slice to new MIDI track, we're going to get a little pop-up. And it's going to ask us what to do. So I'm just going to use the default. This is the default right here. And I'm going to hit OK. And I want to show you what slicing does. So now down here, we have this drum rack. And we have pieces of our audio. If we go into one of these slices, we'll see that what we're actually dealing with here is the whole audio track, just sort of a portion. See how it's like little gates, little arrows saying, hey, just play this part. So it's actually referencing the same single audio file. And this is not an uncommon thing for slicers to do, but it doesn't help us get these slices out to something like an external sampler or something like that. So how could we do that? So when we right click and we say slice to new MIDI track, create one slice per transient. Remember how we talked about transient markers, these little gray arrows that represent the high point, the beginning of an event? Well, that's what it's currently picking from, but we have so many options in here. We can do warp marker, wherein if we drop warp markers at places in here that we want, then we will create slices at those points. So if you ever want to like slice something up very specifically, use the warp marker slice. It's really, really good. In this case, I'm actually going to use let's do eighth note. Now, what you have to change here is the slicing preset. So built in is the one that will go to the drum rack and simpler slicing route. But if you choose one that goes to sampler, we have some more options. Now, don't worry about all these weird words afterwards. It does not matter that these all have crazy effects on them. Just go ahead and pick the first one and hit OK. So what this has just done is slice this to the sampler. So you need 11 Suite or Ableton Suite to do this because you need the sampler to do it. But this is the sort of big boy sampler in Ableton. And the way that it's working here is that each one of our slices is still referencing that audio file like it was before. Let's go ahead and zoom in over here. You'll see that it's still doing that little reference gate thing like, hey, just play this little bit right here. But we get another option in here. We can tell these slices to export as individual audio parts. So before we do that, let's just go ahead and listen to what we've done. It's really fun. You can come in here and remix it. Like, Super fun. Anyways, okay, so now we got all these little slices in here, right? We could remix it in Ableton, but what if we wanted to take this out to like a hardware sampler or a modular thing? Well, I mean, that's what I do all the time. So let's go into our zone section here. Let's enter the zone where we can see our slices. And we're going to click on all of them. We're going to hold shift, click on all of them, right click and say crop sample. Do that. Watch what happens. Whoa. Yeah, now we got slices. Look at that. So, I mean, it's the same sound that was there before, but now they're individual files. And if we right click on these, we can say show in browser, and you'll see that they are in our project folder under processed crop. Now, they're not named very well. So what I end up doing here is I like to right click, I say show in explore. And then I grab all these slices that I need and I copy them out into a different folder, like a working folder for what I'm doing. So like, you know, if I had like a slice folder on my desktop, like Tonto Motion. And then I would come in here with like a batch file renamer and rename these. But that's how you can get slices out of Ableton using the warp modes or using transient markers and all the stuff that we just talked about. So that is the final portion of my video for here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful to you. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun. I love this kind of stuff. It's really, really, really fun to play with audio in Ableton. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any fun tips or tricks with slicing and or warping, leave them in the comments below. Support the channel on Patreon if you want, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Take care of yourself. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and I hope you have a very wonderful day.